Hi, welcome back. It seems the security stories are going pretty well. They've got a lot of views in the last few weeks. So I figured I'd do another one. People seem to like them. I've done 3 so far, and they detailed a lot of the stuff I did in clubs and so on, the sort of classic security bouncer type stuff. I did loads and loads of security work over about 23 years. And one of the things I did was surveillance. I'd spent a good few months doing that. And I thought it was going to be one of the sort of less dangerous aspects of security, but I was kind of wrong on that one. It was quite unusual. We were surveilling charity workers. Now this is where some of the sort of myth lies, that when you see people in the street or they knock on the door and they're wearing Greenpeace t-shirts or Heart Foundation t-shirts and all this kind of thing, and often they've got bibs on with the charity and it looks like a legitimate charity, and you assume that those people, they've got a card, they've got all the ID, you assume that they work directly for that charity. Well, the fact is probably 99% of those people do not work for those big charities. Very small charities normally have workers directly, but the big ones actually outsource all their collection, and they outsource it to one of about 3 or 4 major companies in the UK. And these companies are not charities, they're solely businesses, and their whole business is designed around collecting money for charities, and then they take a percentage. So that's one of the reasons that I don't personally give to big charity anymore, because I found out exactly how these people operate, and a huge portion of the money that you donate, before it even gets to the charity, it gets paid into the accounts of these big companies. They take their cut, and then the charity get given a cut on top. So your money is being reduced immediately. And those big companies are very successful, you know, they're very profitable. They generally employ young students, they pay them quite well, they pay them on a commission basis, which is why those young people that come to your door or sort of grab your arm in the street and they're a bit kind of pushy. That's because they're actually on commission, so they get a basic. I think when I was there they were getting £7 or £8 an hour. This was a few years ago obviously, which was quite good back then. Then they're getting comms for all the sign-ups they do, and they have like a minimum sign-up criteria as well. Why were we surveilling them? Well, this is where it gets really shady. So some of those people were found to be selling on details to criminal gangs because they're harvesting bank details from people. You know, gone are the days when charity collectors go round and just sort of take a few pence in a box or whatever. Nowadays, what they want is your bank information, and you think, well, I'm giving my bank details to the British Heart Foundation or Greenpeace or whichever of these big charities it is. You're actually giving it to a private company that you may not even realise, and that private company has obviously a due diligence to make sure all of its employees are really, really trustworthy and honest. But of course, these kids, you know, that random people that they're employing, and hundreds of them, they often fall through the cracks and you get these odd dodgy ones. So some of these dodgy people were taking the bank details and they were selling them on, you know, making lists and selling them on to criminal gangs who were obviously exploiting that and using the bank details for their own nefarious gains. On top of that, there was the kind of milder and more petty offences of people that were saying that they were collecting money for charity all day, and then they would go to the pub and sit in there. So we were employed by these private companies to look at the charity collectors, watch what they were doing, follow them, and make sure that they were actually collecting money, that they were following, you know, a reasonable criteria of money collection. They weren't harassing people or slacking off, going to the pub. Now, the collectors weren't supposed to know we were surveilling them. Obviously, that would be a pointless exercise. So we were given the collectors' car details and then the sort of approximate location that they would be heading out from. We would then be in a vehicle and we would follow these teams, sometimes for many, many miles, you know, 50 or 60 miles, follow them to certain parts of the country. And we did this all over the UK. It was all over the country. And we would follow them and then watch what they got up to. There were teams of like 6 collectors, you know, they would go out in maybe 2 different cars, meet up at a location and then start knocking doors, or meet up at a location and then start standing in the street. And we had to follow them in the vehicle, watch where they went, because this was before all the GPS tracking and stuff. And then we were watching what they got up to. What we did see is a lot of people slacking off. You know, it is what you expect, students, etc. They were chilling out in the car, sitting there having a smoke, not doing the work, and then billing the main company for that. Now, what I thought was a rather safe little number, and it was quite well paid at the time as well, turned into probably one of the only times in my life where I was pretty sure I might die. You know, and I've been attacked many times in clubs, etc. People have pointed guns at me, people have tried to stab me, and I've never been as concerned as I was on this particular occasion. So I followed these charity teams to Bradford, and if anyone knows Bradford, it is an area that's considered in the UK to be quite poverty stricken. It was quite an industrial sort of place. Obviously a lot of the industries died away, left high unemployment, and there's generally a lot of criminal activity there, let's put it that way. It's not the place on my list of top 10 places in the UK to go and visit, but I hadn't been before, to be fair. It's not a place I would have ever wanted to go. Ended up there for work, followed these charity teams to a council estate. And council estates were very popular with these charity teams because, believe it or not, they were more likely to get donations from people in sort of lower monetary value housing areas, because people in the very wealthy areas where you would think they would get lots of donations actually used to shoo them off, tell them, you know, to get clear off, threaten to call the police. They didn't want anyone coming to their doors of their £1.5 million houses. But if you were to go around the £60,000-70,000 houses, then people were quite affable to give to charity. So that was kind of a nice thing I learned, you know, that people with the least are often the ones that are willing to give the most. So I follow them to this estate. Whilst I'm sat there surveilling them, I'm sat in my car watching, and I notice there's a very large group of gentlemen, not white English. I won't go into the exact nationality they were because I don't want to turn this into like a racial situation, but for the purposes of the story, it was a gang, a non-white English gang, and it was very clear to me that they were running a huge drugs operation in the area. Now, this whole estate, I was probably the only white guy on this whole estate. That's why I bring it up, because it kind of made me stick out a little bit. And these guys are standing outside a shop. There's like 40 or 50 guys spread out down this street, all clearly, you know, knowing each other and working in unison. And they've got a stream of cars pulling up, and then packages and money are being exchanged in and out the windows. So it doesn't take a brain of Britain to work out what's going on there. There was like a drugs op going on, and considering the houses down there were worth like 60 grand, and then you've got AMG G-Class Mercedes turning up like all custom with about 150 grand's worth of motor, and you kind of think, that's kind of unusual that these guys would have that car here. And it wasn't just one or two. I mean, there was just a stream of these cars. It was like Monaco or something. It was like nothing I've ever seen. No police anywhere in sight. The estate looked like it was just sort of self-policed, basically. I doubt if the police wanted to go in there at all. It was a rough area. And these guys clocked me, you know, because I'm a white guy. I'm sat on my own in a car. I was actually in a Subaru Impreza at the time, so that's probably not the most low-profile car I ever drove, but that was all I had. And they start making their way over to me, and I think, this is not good. And my main concern was it was going to blow my cover for the charity collectors. Car got surrounded, so I get out the car and I say, hey guys, you know, what's going on? And straight away they say, look, we think you're 5-0, police. And I'm like, no mate, I'm not 5-0, you know, I'm running a surveillance op here. I was pretty honest, I've got nothing to hide from those guys. And they're like, right, surveillance op is definitely the police. So a few of them pull up their jackets, and they've all got knives on them, really, you know, sizable knives, like big kitchen knives, basically. They then have a discussion between them about which one of them is going to stab me. And I can tell by the way they're discussing this, very, very relaxed, very nonchalant. You know, it was just like oh, are you going to do it this time kind of thing. That's what really concerned me, because I've been in situations before where people are acting crazy and they make threats or they pull out a weapon, and you know that it's a lot of bluster, and even then they're kind of hysterical and crazy, and there's only one of them. You know, that's a lot different to an organised gang having a nonchalant conversation about which one's going to kill you. And I thought to myself, no one in this area is really going to care, because I'm just one white guy who everyone thinks is a police officer. So I say to him, look guys, I'm working for a charity, because I thought that would buy me a little bit of kudos with them maybe. And I said, I've got all my identification in here. I pointed out the collectors over the road. I said, I'm actually watching those guys because there's been some issues with the charity collection. You know, they haven't been making the collections properly, and the company's paid for me to come and watch them. So they insist they want to see my ID, and they're still talking amongst themselves about what they're going to do with me. So I show them the ID, and they sort of talk amongst themselves. And basically they come to an agreement that, you know, they like charity. Apparently they're in favour of things like the Heart Foundation, and for that reason only they decided that they weren't going to stab me at all. And one of them then comes over with a huge great bundle of notes and just starts pulling off notes, and he said, you know, how much do you want for the charity? And I said, look, I don't actually collect, I'm just here to watch those guys. And he said, well, I'll go and give some money to those guys then. I said, well, I doubt if they can accept it, because they'll only take bank details. He said, oh no, we don't use bank details, mate, we don't have banks. I said, well, that's fine, no problem. Luckily they all disappeared over to the other side of the road, left me to it. I got the hell out of the area. But that's probably the single most concerning point in my security career, taking into account, you know, I've been kicked in on the floor by like 15 guys in a club before, but this one concerned me much more, because I really thought that I was going to be stabbed multiple times and I would be left on my own after that. So guys, I hope that's been a bit of an eye-opener about how some of these charities collect money, about if you do security, taking into account sometimes the safe jobs can end up being the worst jobs. Be careful the areas you're going into. You know, if I was doing that kind of thing now, I'd definitely do my homework, drive around that area beforehand and see what I was getting into, and probably I would put guys on that were more suitable for that area, i.e. their culture and ethnicity fitted in and blended in, rather than sticking in a great big brawny shaven-headed white dude into the middle of Bradford. Guys, have a great one, take care, I'll see you next time.